Okay. Welcome to November 20th's meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Please rise and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mrs. Abrano, can you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Engler.
Here.
Commissioner Reeder.
Here.
Commissioner McMahon.
Here.
Commissioner Gregory.
Here.
And Chair Lemo is absent tonight.
Any person who wishes to speak regarding an item on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction during the public comments portion of the agenda must file a public speaker card with the recording secretary before that portion of the agenda is called. Mrs. Zambrano, can you raise your hand? Thank you. Okay. Any person who wishes to speak on a specific agenda item must first file a public speaker card before the specific item is called. Persons addressing the Traffic Commission are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. Under state law, issues presented or introduced under public comments can have no action and will be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division Manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. It would be appreciated if you'd silence all cell phones during the meeting. As a reminder, there is not to be any dialogue between the audience and commissioners at any time. TOTV can record your TOTV can only record your comments when speaking into the microphone. A wireless microphone is available for your convenience should you need to step away from the podium while speaking or you're not able to come to the podium. Okay. All right. So our agenda starts with now public comments. Item 4. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. The recording secretary will set the timer accordingly. The green light on the timer will begin counting down the 3 minutes. When the yellow light is displayed, you will have 1 minute left. So please begin wrapping up your comments. The red light indicates your 3 minutes are up, so please stop speaking, but remain at the podium until questions, if any, from the commissioners have been answered. And we have our first speaker, who is our lead speaker for the evening.
Excuse me, Madam Vice Chair. Those speakers are for the specific item. Correct.
Okay. All right. Do we have anyone here to speak in public comments? Okay. Anything not on the agenda? Okay. All right. Now we'll move to summary notes. Are there any comments to the summary notes from agenda? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to engineers' reports. Item 6. Now I ask if there's any. Mr. Mashiko?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Engler. This item tonight is a petition request from the residents fronting Calle Olivo for the installation of speed humps along their street. We have a slide presentation over on that far video monitor. Hopefully everyone can see it. Calle Olivo is located just east of the 23 freeway. To the west of the 23 freeway, south of Pedersen Road, east of Calle Almendro, and north of Avenida de los Arboles. It's a half-mile long U-shaped residential street, and because it's that U-shaped configuration, it crosses 3 streets 2 times. There's crosscutters at the westerly intersection with Calle Pimiento, and to the west, you'll find that there's Ladera Elementary School along Calle Almendro, which has speed humps. Just to give a little background, we received a petition by the residents, or from the residents fronting the street, on May 21st of this year. 48 of the 51 homes signed that petition, which is a 94% signature rate. And a week after the petition was submitted, we collected the data before the 2012-2013 school year went to summer break. An analysis was performed with all the traffic data, and it's summarized in your staff report with conclusions and recommendations. Prior to this meeting, we notified about 200 residents by mail who live along Calle Olivo and the surrounding streets of this meeting, so that they can appear tonight and provide input to the traffic commissioners. Before the meeting began, I did hand out 5 written comments from residents that I received by phone, and they're there for you to read. Here's I'm going to go through a sequence of photos that shows Calle Olivo, the unique characteristics along the street. The lower left portion of each photo shows a neighborhood map that shows roughly where the photo was taken. In this first photo, this is the west side of Calle Olivo as you enter from Avenida de los Arboles. One thing you'll notice in all these pictures is that there's no sidewalks and there's no street lights. As you travel just a bit north at the intersection of Calle Pimiento, this is where you'll find the pair of crosscutters. It serves as a natural calming feature. It slows traffic down. If you look at the pavement, there's some scarring as cars have bottomed out. And we sort of refer to this as inverted speed humps. Another feature that you'll notice along the street, this is more towards the northern portion, east of Hillman, is that there's a curvature. In this case, it's a vertical road curvature that limits your visibility to look down the street. There's also a horizontal curvature at each of the northeast and northwest corners. This photo was taken near Calle Alamo, and because of this curvature, this also limits your visibility at those 2 locations. The city has a formal policy on speed humps. It was originally adopted in 1983 and revised in 2009. There's about 9 criteria, but tonight we're just going to focus on 4 of them. Number 1 is a petition rate, must exceed a petition of 75%. There's a daily traffic threshold of 2,000 vehicles per day. There's a speed component where 75% of the vehicles must exceed the 25 mile per hour speed limit. And number 4 is the street must meet the vehicle code definition as a residential street. One thing I would like to point out for Calle Olivo, we did relax the daily traffic requirement by 500 vehicles from 2,000 vehicles per day down to 1,500 vehicles per day. I won't go through the list of road conditions that would allow this to happen, but the key things here were the lack of street lights and lack of sidewalks. So with our findings, we found that 3 of the 4 key criteria were satisfied. The petition rate at 94%. The daily traffic volume was the one that didn't meet. That was measured at 1,242 vehicles per day, which is about 258 vehicles shy of the requirement. The speed component was satisfied. 82% of the vehicles exceeded the 25 mile per hour speed limit. And number 4, the street did meet the vehicle code definition as a residential street. 3 other findings that we thought would be worth sharing with the commissioners and with the residents relate to the prevailing speeds, collisions, and shortcutting traffic. The speeds along Calle Olivo range from 31 to 36 miles an hour. The highest speeds were at the midpoint east of Hillman. Speeds there were about 36 miles an hour. The road there is a little bit more straight. And along the east and west portions of Olivo, the speeds were a little bit slower. But these speeds are fairly typical of most streets that we look at when there's a speed hump request. There were no reported collisions to the police department over a 36-month period from 2010 to 2012. And we did do what we call a license plate survey, and we confirmed that there is shortcutting traffic on Calle Olivo between Pedersen Road and Avenida de los Arboles. During the morning peak commute period, 11% of the traffic is shortcut traffic, and during the evening peak commute period, 14% of the traffic is shortcut traffic. Whether or not this is a high number, the city considers about 35% of the traffic on the road to be shortcut traffic to be a high percentage. So based on the data, staff cannot recommend the installation of speed humps on Calle Olivo. However, if the Traffic Commission feels they would like to recommend the installation of speed humps, they would need to cite special considerations and identify them clearly. This has been done on 9 other streets in the city where speed hump requirements were not met. And examples that have been used on other streets that did receive speed humps that apply to Calle Olivo is that there are no sidewalks, there are no street lights, there is shortcutting traffic, and there is reduced sight distance here due to the road curvature. The staff recommendation in the report is to request additional police enforcement during the morning and evening commute periods, as well as the school peak periods, and supplement the enforcement with the portable radar feedback sign. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioner McMahon.
Mr. Machiko, one of the residents who wrote in had a question about, instead of speed humps, closing off the road with poles. And there may be other people out there who have been thinking the same thing. Would you comment on that idea?
Okay, if I think the idea there was closing the street off. The city does have a policy for street closure. It's a very controversial thing to do. It impacts a large portion of the neighborhood, and basically there is a shortcut component to that, and also we would need a petition from the residents who front the street that they would like to close the street off. There's implications to emergency access, and I think on top of that, there would also have to show that there is a need, or there is no longer a need for that road for traffic circulation purposes.
Thank you.
There's a lot of line of sight issues along this street. I guess my thought would be, how could we resolve those without speed humps possibly? Or more importantly, one of my thoughts was, is it possible to provide a buffer zone for those people that need to back out of that street? And I noticed, I observed directly and noticed in your pictures, there's a lot of parked cars along that area. Is it possible to put a parking zone, stripe it a certain way to create kind of a buffer and create a sense of a narrower street that might have a calming effect?
Typically, we don't stripe residential streets like this with markings to indicate an area exclusively for parked vehicles. It may create a sort of a false sense of security because it doesn't necessarily eliminate the sight distance issue. What it may do is sort of allow the person who's exiting the driveway to come out further, knowing where the left edge of the roadway will be, so they know as they pull out, as a car is coming up the street, they would know that the cars are being forced more towards the center of the road, away from the curbs. But typically, we wouldn't recommend that adding additional striping to a residential street like this.
Even where there are no sidewalks?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. Yeah, one of your concerns in some of the notes that we've read are about, actually one of the procedures is for emergency services to weigh in and communicate if there's a concern about delay in response times. Can you respond to that? Or perhaps our representative of the police department can?
Well, I'll comment on that in terms of we've had the fire department chime in on these types of issues in the past where speed humps were proposed. They typically don't recommend or they don't encourage adding speed humps because as they do drive over each speed hump, they do have to drive over them at probably less than 5 miles an hour, so it will impact their response time. But something like this, we didn't speak with the local fire department that serves this area, but we just know from the past that they don't encourage us to install more speed humps.
I have another question for you. In that same line, are there less invasive, less pronounced speed humps, speed lumps that actually can be installed, but which actually don't have the effect of hurting the response times? And if so, do you have any idea of whether that in fact slows traffic down and makes it worth the city's while to install those?
I think there's a certain type of speed hump that has 3 sections where it's cut out to allow the wheelbase of a fire truck to drive through unimpeded. But typically what happens is I think you're going to have drivers use those cutout portions, and half the vehicle will be driving through the unimpeded portion and the other half will be driving over the speed hump. We don't have any streets in town that has that, but they do slow speeds. Not as effective as a speed hump that we have, the standard 3-inch high speed humps, but they will slow speeds.
Yeah, if I could just, I recall another petition, and the grade of the street was a factor of response time also. So have anybody looked at that in conjunction with the speed humps? Because I know at that time, the fire department recommended against it due to the grade, because people can lose control going over speed humps down a hill. So have you looked at that?
Yeah, the grade here is probably not that big of a concern. It's probably about 3 to 4%, and this is the region that's near Hillman, or the northern portion where the road has more of a straight look to it. If the road had a longer sustained grade, maybe that would be a concern. But because this road segment is fairly short, I don't think speed humps here would pose a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mashiko, I went over there and looked at the neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and I saw these beautiful wide streets, and it says in the papers here they're 40 feet wide. Well, I went back to my home, and I measured out my street. I only have 30 feet in my street, and of course, there's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on my street as well. So I was thinking that might be part of the problem, is the developer back in '62, when the land wasn't as much of a premium, decided, well, we'll be able to sell our houses because we have these nice wide streets for everyone to enjoy, and a lot of separation between the houses from one side of the street to the next. Well, to a driver, that looks like they can have better control over their safe operation of the vehicle because it is a wide street. But it's still at 25 miles an hour speed limit. So when this meeting was called and I saw this on the agenda, I saw, well, speeding is bad. But when I saw the data, where the average speed is 31 miles an hour, I'm confused by that. That doesn't sound like an excessive speed. Now, I haven't lived in that neighborhood, so I don't know exactly what the residents have experienced, but all I can see is the data of a 31 mile an hour average speed on one end and a 33 on the other, and then in the top where it's more straight, not as curved, the average citizen operating a vehicle there is at 36 miles an hour. The question I also had was if, in fact, it's decided to have traffic enforcement be more active in this area, would an officer cite an individual that's going 31 in a 25 mile an hour speed limit? I don't know. So that was it's more of an observation than a question, I guess, is that I thought we were going to get some real speeding numbers here. But in my opinion, a 5 or 6 mile an hour over the posted speed limit isn't, especially on a 40-foot wide street, isn't irresponsible operation.
Okay, I guess the question there was in terms of the enforcement for...
The question, like I said, it was more of an observation, so it's not a direct question. It's just that I would like to have more information as to why this is considered a speeding problem with the data that you've collected. It is over the speed limit, but is it an unsafe speed?
Okay, well, I mentioned earlier the typical speed or the speeds that we're finding here on Calle Olivo are fairly typical of most residential streets of this type. It's a residential collector. It collects traffic from more of a primary road, like in this case it's Avenida de los Árboles. It collects that traffic, feeds it to the interior streets. So you're going to have a little bit more traffic on this type of street as it feeds and funnels down into the interior streets. But yeah, in terms of speed overall, 33 to 35 is sort of the norm. Here we have ranging from 31 to 36. So it's pretty much right in there with the normal speeds that we observe on other residential streets.
Thank you.
Mr. Mashiko, if at any time the police department can comment during the evening, that would be a help, I think, if they have something they can share other than what you've presented. So I think we're going to move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to address the commission on this agenda item may do so by filling out a purple speaker card. If you wish to fill out a written speaker card, you can fill out something in this color. Nice teal. Okay. All right. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes each, but we have a lead speaker who'll be given 10 minutes. I'd like to call Arnie Camp to the podium. Please give us your name and your city of residence.
Matter? I'll use the taller one, I guess. My name is Arnie Camp. I live in the city of Thousand Oaks. I live on Calle Olivo. I am a sworn police officer. I have years of experience patrolling city streets, conducting traffic enforcement in the city of Santa Monica, Northridge, and currently in Camarillo. I'm by no means a public speaker, so excuse me, I'm going to take some notes and read from different things. But what I can speak honestly about is my passion about safety and the safety of our citizens, our community, our street, our kids, our pets. Because I, along with the sergeant over here, have probably seen more deaths and more injuries from auto versus PEDs than I care to elaborate on. But when you've scraped brains off of streets because a kid was walking in the street and a car wasn't paying attention, usually relating to speed or reckless driving, it's not a fun experience when you have to deal with the parents. All right, and that includes also holding C-spine. I'm also a certified EMT, so I've ridden in ambulances, so I can speak on the behalf of emergency professionals responding to calls. And with that, I can tell you speed humps, with today's technology, with suspensions and so forth, they do not impede our response time one bit, especially in a residential neighborhood. I have personal relationships with a number of the fire captains here in Ventura County. I've spoken with them personally about it as well. From an administrative point, they can say what they want. Those guys who are out are actually on the street, driving the trucks, driving the engines, the squads, doesn't impede their response time one bit. They almost kind of laughed and said, we barely even feel those things with today's technology. About 20 years ago, this same position, the same board, not you individuals, but the same street petitioned to get speed humps. So this is not a new problem. This is a 20-plus-year-old problem. The survey, the statistics that you're looking at are a week's worth of surveys. Doesn't include holidays, doesn't include summer, doesn't include all those other times. It's 1 week. So your inquiry about the speed, we've been living there for a long time, and you're looking at numbers and speeds from a week's worth. When people see those spike the strips, and they know, oh shoot, they're tracking my speed. Maybe I don't want speed humps. I'll slow down. So that could play into those results as well. So, but with that being said, something to note as far as the options, because there are a number of options listed in the survey, in the report here. And there's really only two viable, long-lasting options. One was addressed as far as road closure at Hillman Street. I don't know how viable that is because, as an emergency professional, I wouldn't want any street closed where I can pass through and get to somebody's residence that needs help. On a note, and some of the original homeowners may discuss, the original master plan of the neighborhood that we live in, on Cayo Olivo, Hillman was supposed to be a cul-de-sac. That was not supposed to be a thoroughfare. The majority of the individuals who speed through our neighborhood most likely use Hillman. They live in the Pedersen, they live up Uppingham, or live on Almendro and avoid the speed humps that are in that area. So with regards to the closure of Hillman, it's a long-lasting, viable option. I just don't know how viable it is as far as safety and whatnot. So really the only long-lasting, and again, this is 20 years worth that we've been fighting for this, is speed humps. All right, I know aesthetically, we all know, we've read the pamphlets and all those kind of things. On our street, though, we have 100% support. I know Jim mentioned the 94%, that 48 out of 52 that were assigned, that were petitioned. That was actually, I had forwarded him a couple additional signatures that we got late. 51 of the 52 signed in support. All of those residents live on Cayo Olivo. The only one, they don't actually live on Olivo, they live on Hillman. And two, they never answered their door. We probably went to their house at least 8 times. They never once opened their door. Okay? But that they live on Hillman. They don't live on Olivo. So every single resident that lives on Olivo is supportive of speed humps on our street. There may be some others on Pimiento or the cross streets. They don't have to deal with the kind of speed that we do, the kind of near accidents, the near deaths that we have to encounter. All right, when we're trying to pull out of our driveway, it's trying to safely walk up and down our street with our kids or our dogs, or there's actually 2 schools on either side of us. There's the Magnet School off of Arbalest, and the other one that all the kids go to. So we're right in the middle of 2 schools. So with that, you already know the horse configuration. Another note with regards to the speed, that survey, those strips were put down 1 week after the radar trailer was put out. So hopefully that probably put speed-conscious drivers that in the back of their mind. But that radar trailer was out for a week. It went away, and then a few days later, the speed stripes were out. So that also, not only was it just a week worth of numbers, it was only a few days after the radar trailer was out. So we are dealing with speeds a lot faster than the average medians of 31, 36, and so forth. So, and speed humps, just from different surveys that I've done, being in traffic enforcement and law enforcement, The speed humps, when they're individuals driving over them, reduces their speed from about 15 to 20 miles per hour while they're going over the speed hump, and then approximately 25 to 30 miles per hour in between. We'll take those numbers. We'll be happy to have those numbers because those are more realistic numbers in the neighborhood. The speed limit is 25, but still, we'll take those over what we're dealing with right now. As far as the speed, the survey doesn't reflect this, and I wish it would, because statistics, and I was a business major, you can skew statistics and show whatever numbers you want in favor of one way or another. But I asked Jim, I said, well, what were the top speeds in that survey? It doesn't say it in the report. The top speeds were, and they're all within increments of 5 miles per hour, the top speeds were within the 51 to 55 mile per hour speed limit. The next one down were the 46 to 50. So there were individuals driving up into those speeds. What's in the report are the medians, right? Statistical words, medians, right? Where averages, you can take out outliers and you can skew those statistics however you want. But that's from the raw data. Being public information, I was able to get that information. But 51 to 55 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour, that's 30 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. That's what we're dealing with on a regular basis. That's what we've been dealing with for 20 years. It didn't happen before, and we talked to some of the original homeowners. The board was supportive. The fire administrative individual came in and said, nah, it's not good on our shocks. It'll cost our trucks too much to fix if we have to go over there to reduce our response time. So they fixed the speed humps at that time. Well, that's not an issue in today's technology, and I already discussed that. As far as special circumstances for our street, and I was happy to hear a number of you ask questions about those, the sight distance obviously being one. In the report in front of you, there are 10 special circumstances that they addressed. They need to have 2 to be able to reduce that by 500, and they did that, and I appreciate that. But we meet 9 of those 10. Not just 2. We meet 9 of those 10. The street is a speeding. Obviously, it's adjacent to one school, but we actually have 2 schools that we're in the middle of. There are no streetlights. It's as dark as you can possibly be at night when you're trying to walk your kid, especially right now when the sun goes down early and you try to walk your kid or your dog after you get home from work. It's impossible and extremely dangerous. There are no sidewalks, again, part of the master plan, so you have to walk in the street. You have no choice. And you saw in the picture, there are a lot of cars that are parked on that street. So you have to walk around those cars, and if there's 2 cars parked on either side of the street and there are 2 cars coming in opposite directions, that gives you about 3 feet to walk. And when those cars are traveling around 31, 36 miles per hour on average, right? But that's scary in itself. When they're traveling at 46 to 55 miles per hour, that's life-threatening. And that's what we're dealing with again. So again, there are a number of hidden driveways. You saw that in the pictures. Backing out of your driveway or even pulling into your driveway. Somebody's going to talk about that. Is extremely dangerous when the people are traveling at that high speed. High pedestrian, short distance or sight distance we talked about. Shortcutting is present. The street's narrow, even 40 feet, but when you're having a lot of cars parked on the street, the road gets a lot narrower, right? And the entire street is one winding curve. The entire street. There's a couple little sections that are straightaways, and that's where people just gun it because they're trying to get home or trying to get to the 23 freeway because that's a thoroughfare to get to the 23 freeway. I wish there was an on-ramp and off-ramp at Pedersen, but there's not. So they either have to go way out of the way and go to Sunset, or they get off on Arbalest and cut through our street to get to all that whole huge Pedersen townhome community that's back up in there, or the Uppingham streets. That the shortcutting percentages, I think, are much higher because that only looked at certain license plates. But I would say those numbers are a lot higher than what the report shows. Talking about accidents as well, there was a head-on collision on as recent as September 21st on the corner of Calle Olivo and Hillman. Most of those, as the sergeant will attest to, most accidents are not reported to police if they're non-injury and if there's no criminal element involved, i.e. being under the influence. Most of it's just an exchange of information. Most of the times those individuals exchange that, and we as peace officers never know that it even occurred.
Thank you. You have no more comments. We have some other speakers.
Okay.
Thank you. Excuse me, sir. Were there any questions by commissioners? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Our next speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Smith. Sorry. Please state your name and place of residence.
Jeffrey Smith, Thousand Oaks, Cali Olivo, across from Arnie. Arnie did most of the data, so I'm going to give you the experiences that we've had on the street. A perfect example is this week, somebody organized a community cleanup day. Dumpster was down the street about 4 houses, so it's down the hill from me. I live at the top of the hill. At one point, Arnie had a wheelbarrow on his side of the street. I had a wheelbarrow on my side of the street. We were going down to the dumpster, and cars were flying through us, and they weren't slowing down at all. I think that is the biggest problem. When I heard the numbers of the pass-through at 14%, I was blown away, because we see them fly down our hill and make them right on Hillman all the time. I mean, to me, it's got to be up above 50%. But it's the drivers and the cavalier attitude that they have, that it is their freeway. If you are walking across the street, they don't slow down. They're angry at you. I back into my driveway. I've pulled to back into my driveway and had people go between my car and the driveway. My kids walking across the street, they're 12 and 13. You think they could walk across the street by themselves? No way. I have to be out there, and I have to okay it, because you can't see these cars that are speeding coming up the hill, and they can't see the kids. It's, the response times, God forbid that we don't get speed humps because of response times, but then they have to respond to us because our kid has got hit. If the response time is 30 seconds longer, so be it, if that eliminates a child getting hit. My daughter can't be here. She wrote an essay. Her name is Montana. It says, "To whom it may concern. I believe that Cali Olivo should have speed humps. Kids and pets live up and down the street. For example, all of us kids like to have lemonade stands and garage sales. Secondly, some of the pets get out, and with cars driving way too fast, the pets can get hurt. In addition, it's just not safe to live here with cars speeding at 45 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour per zone. To illustrate this point, people have almost gotten hit. My neighbor Kate Camp was crossing the street when a car came speeding up and was so close she could touch it. Finally, we have no street lights or sidewalks. With no sidewalks, we are forced to walk in the street where cars are racing by. Sincerely, Montana Stith." Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we have Michael. He lives at... Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you have a question? I'm sorry.
You'll have to step to the mic.
Could you come to the mic?
Sorry.
Just a short question, Mr. Stiff.
Yes.
You had mentioned that cleanup you had with the wheelbarrows. I assume that was on the weekend?
Yes, Saturday.
So the data was kind of weighted towards commuter traffic, but I would assume that it's just as bad on the weekend as during the week when there's
Yes.
commuters. There's no difference? Because I was over there on a Sunday, and it didn't seem too busy.
I would say that obviously there's not as much traffic, but because of OSH, I mean, people use that all the time. And, being at the top of the hill, I watch them race down the hill and make a right on Hillman all the time. So while the volume, it may not be as great on a weekend, the speeds are still the same. And like I said, it's kind of a cavalier attitude of, it's 40 feet wide, this is my freeway, and you're not my neighborhood. And I've actually said to people, why don't you tell me where you live, and I'll go speed on your street and see how you like it. And they don't respond.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a card from Michael at 2712. Or is that?
Hi, I'm Michael, and I live in Thousand Oaks, Cali Olivo, and I wrote this, and this is why we should have speed bumps on Cali Olivo. A lot of people on our street have kids and pets, and most of them have gotten out into the street. Personally, I don't want to get killed by a passing car. They're going so fast, I have to wait some time till I can cross the street so a speeding car won't kill me or my dog. There are tons of stories of kids and pets getting out of their house into the street. Luckily, no cars killed them. but both of my dogs have gotten out. Dakota was one of my dogs, and he was blind, and he got out all the time. Tebow, my other dog, is just misbehaved and just runs out the door. The cars are using our street as the shortcut highway. Also, people have lots of fun in their front yards with fast cars. We have to be old enough to be trusted to even go out there with an adult. Plus, we don't have any sidewalks or street lights, so this is a very dangerous neighborhood for kids and pets. Speed humps would make my neighborhood a lot safer for everyone. I rest my case. Thank you.
So we have some questions for you.
This is not a question. This is just a comment. If speed humps go in, you're still going to need to be really careful. The cars are still going to be coming. They're still going to be using it as a cut through. And it's not going to be super, super safe. I just want you to know that, and all your friends and your pets. It's not the answer. So if this happens, you still have to be careful.
I know. Thank you.
And Michael, I just want to acknowledge your youth and your commitment. And how old are you?
I'm 11.
Well, I wish I had spoken as articulately as you at 11. So thank you for coming tonight. Next speaker is Bob Sternberg.
Like Arnie, my name is Rob Sternberg. I live on Cali Olivo in Thousand Oaks. Not a great speaker, but one of the newer homeowners in the neighborhood. I've only been there for about 2 or 3 years, but in some ways I'm, in a sense, the oldest. My grandfather was actually original homeowner in 1960, and he passed away about 3 years ago. And I bought the house from the estate of the family. And I can contest, when I was 10 years old, walking down that street in 1980, there wasn't any fear. It wasn't the traffic there was now. I wouldn't let my kids walk down that street nowadays. And as the neighbors can contest, I've been redoing my front yard for about the last year and a half. And if anybody has a better eyewitness of the traffic on that street, it's myself. And not to focus on you, Mr. Raider. Whether it's a weekend, weekday, any time of the day, those traffics, like Mr. Camp said, can exceed 45, 50 miles an hour. Saturday morning, my dad and I were working on the yard, and I had a guy come by the house going 45, 50 miles an hour, came by a second time about 10 minutes later, and I waved at him to slow down. He actually slammed on the brakes and proceeded to pick a fight with my dad and myself and threatened to come back later to finish a job. We got a police report about that. I see my neighbors coming out in their front lawn and watching their kids trying to cross the street, just looking both ways, pausing for about 10, 15 seconds before they can actually cross the street. And, it's not a good situation. That 31, 36 mile per hour average, it's not realistic. I invite any one of you to come by and hang out my front porch for a couple hours of the beer and just see the traffic comes down my street. That's not a realistic number of what happens on our street. That's kind of all I have.
Hold on. Do we have questions? Any questions? All right. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jane Manquin.
Hi, I'm Jane Manquin. Everybody calls me Beth, and I live at 2748 Calle Olivo. I've been there since 1987 with a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old child when I moved in. I had 2 cars taken out. I live on the down from Hillman. One person actually stopped. She took out the rear end. The other person who took out the whole side of the car took off. I have a neighbor whose dog was killed in full daylight, got out of the yard, unfortunately, and 2 of her cats. When I moved in, these are almost quarter-acre housing areas, and I didn't have a fence in the front. I didn't have a fence in the back, but I had a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old. Well, my kids were not once allowed out the front door. I built a fence in the back, and that was their playground. They were not allowed to cross the street. They were not allowed to walk outside without me because I was scared to death that my kids were going to get killed. If they went someplace, I drove them. I drove kids to school that were walking on the street because I was terrified that these kids were going to get killed. I don't know where the 31 to 36 miles per hour comes from. That's probably what I drive on Cayo Olivo, but it's not what other people drive on Cayo Olivo. And I have yelled myself hoarse innumerable times. Slow down. It's a very frightening situation. I myself have owned a 2001 LS1 Camaro Super Sport with a Corvette engine and 6 on the floor. Loved that car. Very fast. We need those speed bumps on Cayo Olivo. It is a magnet for people flooring it because it's just a beautiful half circle, but people cannot control. I never drove my Camaro on Montgomery Road. They got speed humps. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Next speaker is Tom Johnston.
Good evening. My name is Tom Johnston. I live on Cayo Avellano, which is the cross street just below Olivo. And I've not really prepared anything because I'd only just heard about this meeting 2 days ago. So I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents. I will say the speeding has always been a problem. We've seen it for the 20 years we've been there. What we hadn't seen very often were those electronic signs that will tell you the speed you're going. They're doing it right now at Avenida de los Arboles, right down at the corner. Now, those, I think, do a great job of discouraging, and I think also police presence would help, and maybe some speed limit signs, which are missing on this region that these people are talking about. I think that's very important. Those are easy fixes right away that I think that can be done, you know, long before we get to the speed bump situation. I won't say at the moment I endorse speed bumps, but I can see where everybody's coming from about it. I certainly understand their concerns. We've been here 20 years with 3 small children. We grew up on a street that had loaded with children. We would have occasional speeders too. And I do get the frustration, but I would like to see the city just kind of work some other alternates first, some of the other options that were mentioned. And certainly I think the electronic signs, and I think a police presence, a real police presence there for a sustained time. I think the one gentleman mentioned that, you know, the electronic sign was up for a while and then they took the measurements for the speeds, and that may have had an impact. I would think that'd have a big impact, and I think those signs staying up for a longer time, that electronic speed limit signs staying up for a longer time, might really help out. And I will voice concern about property values, and certainly the fact that there's a permanence to the speed bumps. Once they go in, they're in. They're never coming out, because I have seen that in the 35 years that I've owned homes in several states and so on. I've just seen that in other neighborhoods. So I would just encourage the city to just try everything up to, at this point, the speed bumps themselves, and see what they can do to make a difference. I think a few speeding tickets might change some minds in some of those people up there off Pedersen, because they do come roaring through. I've seen it myself, walking the dogs and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Okay. Our next speaker is Kate Camp.
Maybe I should go for the lower one. Good evening. My name is Kate Camp. I live in the city of Thousand Oaks on Cayo Olivo. My husband is Arnie. I just was scratching notes as I was sitting there. We've lived in our home for 10 years. We love it. We love the city. We love our neighborhood. We have the most amazing neighbors, as you can see. But daily, I worry about walking out in my front yard and putting my kids in the car. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. They're not allowed to leave the front porch without me because I'm so afraid of what will happen to them. Their favorite thing to do is climb the tree in the front yard, and they can't do it unless I park it in a chair right next to them. These are our homes. This is where we build our lives and make our memories, and we should be able to do those things safely. With regards to the emergency vehicles, we are fortunate enough to have a fire department 2 blocks from our home. They've actually had to come to my home and put out a fire before. I don't feel that extra 10 or 20 or 30 seconds it would take them to roll over some humps would be that detrimental. I think the speed humps would be worth more. We have, over the last couple years, called the police department ourselves many times, a dozen times, and begged them to increase patrols, to be a presence, to come help us fix this. I haven't seen a single police car there, I don't think, this entire year, and I've never seen any consistent patrols. Although I love the police very much, I just have no faith in our city's willingness to accept the seriousness of this problem and help us solve it. I cannot rely on the police department to do that, which is why we're here asking for your help, because we've asked them and have not received it. Many times over the last 10 years, several times a year, as I'm slowing to turn left into my driveway, the car behind me, not only will not stop or slow, it has passed me on the driver's side just to race past me, so that I almost slam into the side of it, just trying to get into my own home. It's that attitude Mr. Stith was talking about, where they feel they own the street and me, the pedestrian, is the problem. Or me, the driver coming home, is the problem. I've stopped my car in front of you for a reason. It could be a small child crossing the street. It could be me pulling in my driveway. But as the car behind me, it's your job to stop, and they just don't. Although I love the idea of putting speed signs up on the street, I feel they would be ineffective. We all know the speed limit in a residential zone is 25 miles an hour. Drivers don't care. They just want to get home or get on the freeway and move quickly. They know what the speed limit is. It doesn't matter. The speed limit on Arbalest, right down the street, is 35 miles an hour, which is the average that we're getting on our street, at least at the portion I live at. Arbalest also has sidewalks and streetlights and a lovely new zone they just created a couple years ago for the cars to park, and a bike lane. We have none of that, and yet we're getting the same speeds. I couldn't agree more that the 35 miles per hour average, I was shocked by it. We all were. Perhaps that average is true, but there are a significant number of those cars doing 45 to 55 miles an hour. And the fact that people can drive like that blows my mind, but it is a fact we live with every day. I love those children. I love all these children. It would ruin our lives to see something happen to them in their own homes, crossing their streets to their neighbor's house. Excuse me. We've worked very hard on this issue for a number of years with absolutely no result. And we're just at your mercy here. I realize that there are a few of those criteria we don't meet, but I think the lives of everyone in this room are worth more than the $25,000 for the speed humps. I guess that's all I have to say. I can only plead that you will help us make our community the best that it can be and enjoy our wonderful homes. Any questions?
Any questions of commissioners? Go ahead.
Mrs. Kemp, you described how you won't let your children play in your front yard unless you're actually present in the front yard. Could you expand on that thought? Why do you feel that's dangerous?
Well, with a 5-year-old and 7-year-old, I certainly wouldn't open the door and kick them out. I would be present anyway. What I struggle with is when I want to go out and do some yard work, and they want to come out and be with me. I can't do my yard work and give them their safety my full attention. I have a 5-year-old son. You were a 5-year-old boy. You know how you were. They're impulsive and they run and they jump. And if I am not watching him every second, my fear is that he would jump into that street to chase the ball or the dog or whatever it is. And with a car going 40 miles an hour, he will die, period. And so I don't have that enjoyment of just relaxing in my front yard with my kids. And it's a beautiful front yard. You should come see it. It's just unsafe.
But even at a lower speed, your child would still be in danger.
He could, but I couldn't give you the exact statistics, but a car going 25 miles an hour versus a car going 45 miles an hour, there are precious fractions of seconds involved there where the driver can stop or he can stop. And although we're only talking about fractions of seconds, that is the difference between life and death.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is even though if speed humps are installed, you'll still be in your front yard watching.
Absolutely, but not with the constant hawk attention I do now. I feel that he could be gardening with me and it would be okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Haley Dahlgren. Please remember to introduce your name and your city of residence.
Hi, my name is Haley. I'm 12 years old. I live on Cali Olivo. When I get home from school, I want to have fun and rollerblade, but I am always afraid of the reckless drivers that speed on our street. Constantly, people drive really fast, not caring about the kids in our neighborhood. If we were to have speed bumps, people would slow down and would be able to watch for cars, instead of being afraid of crossing the street all the time. The cars come unexpectedly, and my parents are always worried. My parents don't feel it's safe when my 3-year-old brother and I play in the front yard. Even when we put the slow down kids at play sign, they run it over and still seem to go fast. To make matters worse, we don't even have the safety of having a sidewalk. I think it's very important that we get speed bumps as soon as possible so that no one gets hurt nor killed. We always read articles in the newspapers and see stories in the news about people getting killed by speeding drivers. When they interview people about the accident, everyone mentions that they have tried unsuccessfully in the past to have changes made so the street can be safer. This is your chance to prevent an accident, save an animal, save a life. You never know, it could be mine. I would like to question the past through numbers. If only 11% of people don't live on Cali Olivo, how can the number of cars be almost 1,300 daily and only 50 people live on our street?
Okay, could you wait for a question, please?
I can maybe give you a little information. A lot of people go back and forth. They'll drop their kids off to school, they'll come back, that's 2 trips. Then they'll go to the grocery store and come back. Then maybe they'll go to the post office and come back, and then they'll pick their kids up and come back. So that's part of it. But what I really want to say is what I said to your neighbor. If you get speed humps, it's still going to be dangerous. It's only going to slow them down a little bit. So you still need to be careful. This is just not an easy answer. Okay? So you need to be really careful with or without speed humps.
Thank you for speaking. Our next speaker is Joe Sanders.
Hi, my name's Joe Sanders. I live on Uppingham. I'm one of the people that cut through your neighborhood. But I think some of these people cut through my neighborhood. I will vouch for the speeding. I've seen it. I've gone out and yelled at people, and it happens. But I think it's not as bad as what they're saying. They make it sound like it's just ongoing in every car. I don't think that's the case. I've got a 2000 Toyota Tundra with a TRD package built for off-road. I've had it 700 miles south of the Mexican border in the most ungodly terrain you can imagine, doing 50, 60 miles an hour and driving across dirt and thinking I'm on a newly paved road on a Cadillac. But if I drive down Montgomery Street or in front of Ladera, or there's, I don't know the other name of the street, when I go across those speed bumps at 25 miles an hour, my teeth get rattled. They want speed bumps. I'm not opposed to it, but you got to engineer them so that vehicles can drive the speed limit and not get rattled. I have the same concern. I've lived at this address for 20 years. My kids grew up, went to Ladero, went to Los Cerritos. And yeah, it's a scary thing. So I empathize with them. I think the thing that would really help would be to get police out there with radar guns and start citing people. I can remember on Arbalez when it was 2 lanes in both directions and we had that 3-way stop there. I'd get infuriated because I always stop at the stop sign. And I just loved seeing the people that would roll through get ticketed because the cops would park there. And they nail these people. And I think having cops in our neighborhood just sitting there waiting for some of these people would really give these speeders an attitude adjustment. And I'd welcome that because I see them coming up Uppingham. And something you guys probably haven't heard of, but I've heard it every now and then. On Pedersen, there's been some fatalities on Pedersen from people just, I don't know how fast. But I think having police presence would really do wonders. And I would like to see that happen before you go into speed bumps. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No questions? Thank you. Our next speaker, Joni Vigili. Vigili, thank you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hello. I'm Joni Virgili. I actually live on Cali Pimiento, on the corner of Pimiento and Olivo. Been there 28 years. So, police presence, it's there. It's been there. Sure, if you're going to be there 24/7, 7 days a week, it'll deter it. But I don't think the city's going to go for it. And I don't think you're going to post an officer unless he pitches a tent and stays there so everybody can see him. Of course, they'll slow down. I also was a witness to the horrific accident on Almendro. That's why Almendro has speed humps. It was horrendous. I don't want to see it again. That was over 20 years ago. It's going to happen. I live on the corner. I constantly have to worry. I don't even have small children except for a granddaughter that I will not let play in the front yard because of the speeding that goes on there. Okay? And the children who play on the top of the hill and they go down and they don't pay attention. Okay? You can tell them nothing's 100%. But I tell you now that those speed humps on Almendro, and if we get them, it will slow that traffic down. It will help. It will, 28 years. I've been there 28 years. And we've been asking for help. And we haven't gotten it. Yes, the police are there, especially when we're a pain in the butt. We have to be a pain in the butt. We have to call constantly. They're there. But it's not going to help. Unless you're there 24/7, it's not going to help. It's just not going to help. And we as parents, grandparents, yes, we have to watch our children 24/7. But to give a little more assurance, like she wants to go out and do yard work. She wants to be able to feel a little bit safer. Not 100%, just a little bit. Right now, it's not safe at all, period. Again, no street lights, no sidewalks. With what they've done out on Arbalez, we really got traffic. Okay? And people coming screeching up that street and come trying to turn my corner. I'm surprised I haven't had somebody. We put a wall up, finally, because if they're going to come in that yard, they're going to hit a wall. My neighbor across the street put rocks up. Big giant boulders, what you got from me, by the way. And when they speed down the streets from Olivo and from the other side of Cali Pimiento, it'll stop them. I mean, it's horrendous. The bottom line is we need help. And unless you post an officer there 24/7, it's not going to happen. To me, the last resort is our speed humps. We fought for a year and a half for the ones on Almendro. We finally got them, and that's because something terrible happened. Why do we got to wait for something terrible to happen? Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker, Michael Bates. Please remember to say your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening. My name is Michael Bates. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. I just first want to say thank you for the tone and tenor of this meeting. There's a true discourse and a true listening. I think that's in existence. Whether it's the rants and the acorn, or whether it's our experience of our own Congress in D.C., I'm proud to bring my wife and my kids here because this is a moment where government, I think, is listening and government is working, and we're trying to create a solution to certainly a challenge. I've lived at the corner. Because there's two intersections of Calle Pimiento and Calle Olivo. There are then 8 corner houses on there, so I live on one of the other of those 8. I'm in the second photo that Mr. Mashiko showed. That's our corner house. I like many of the speakers here, would vouch for a lot of what was said about the high speeds, and it's a challenging place to raise kids and feel safe that they're not going to run out in the street or with our dog. Like Tom had mentioned earlier, part of a real challenge in our neighborhood is whether or not it's a walkable neighborhood, particularly at night. And I know that the scope of this meeting is to take a look at speeds and solutions to that, and to the traffic and possible speed bumps. But I also know that in our neighborhood, the question of sidewalks is being looked at, and fixing sidewalks, and categorically, when we go to vote over at Ladera School, crossing, going up the westernmost Olivo and cutting over and going down Almendro to Ladera, what a different experience of walking that is because of the sidewalks, the speed bumps, that people don't drive like that over there. And similar to what Tom said too, and to, I believe it was Joe, about driving over speed bumps, it's challenging. But I know, particularly at the bottom of the westernmost Olivo, it seems where speeds peak is at the corner of Pimiento and Olivo, and I'm wondering if it's simply because on the easternmost Olivo it feels like it's a rush to go up it. On the westernmost Olivo, as they descend south and come towards the bottomed out intersection that Mr. Mashiko showed, and all those scrape marks, we live at that house and hear those scrape marks very frequently. So I really appreciate that you're looking at this, and I hope we can find a solution.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, you do? Oh, wait. Hold on.
Actually, I do, and it's a question I wanted to ask, but you might know. During the summer or winter or anything, are there a lot of kids in this neighborhood? I see quite a few here.
Yes, I mean, and one thing that I've often wondered too is, yes, a lot of kids. There's kids in the cul-de-sac, and that's the one kind of place where once we cross Olivo, we feel like the kids can ride their bikes. We don't let the kids ride their bikes on the street.
Families maybe walk the dog at night. The kids like to visit other kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Just trying to get a sense. No lights and no sidewalks. That's a real issue.
Right. On that southern portion of the western edge of Olivo, there's a sign that's posted that says 15 miles an hour dip, anticipating. Most of the time it's covered over with trees unless I or my neighbor Otto cut it. So I don't think that's an enforced 15 also. I don't know if a stop sign would help at the corner of Olivo and Pimiento too. So in some capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one question. As far as sidewalks go, and I know that the city is really strapped for money, and I don't know where that would be in the budget, but is the general consensus of your neighbors, if there was money, you would want sidewalks? Is that something that y'all would want?
What a privileged position to speak for my neighbors on this. I hope the answer would be yes. It certainly would be our feeling.
Okay, well, obviously that's not a topic.
Right.
I just was curious because there are neighborhoods that they like the rustic, the no sidewalks. They like that look and that feel of being kind of out more in the country, and I just wanted to get your feeling for that.
Well, I think just on this loop, so many of us walk our dogs and walk with our kids, and hope to someday on the bikes with the kids too. But in between Uppingham, where there are sidewalks, and Almendra, where there are sidewalks, and Arbalest, where there are sidewalks, this one kind of sits as an island of misfit toys without them. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jill Horton. Say your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time this evening. My name is Jill Horton. I live at 2624 Calle Olivo, which is just a couple houses up from where it goes from Avenida de los Arboles. I've been trying to get prepared, so I just took a few notes, so I apologize if I don't speak very well tonight. But I've only lived in Thousand Oaks since the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. We love Thousand Oaks. We were so happy to be able to get a house there. And we did realize we were buying a house in a neighborhood without streetlights or sidewalks, but I had no idea exactly what happened, how fast the cars drive along that street. And since the restriping of Avenida de los Arboles, I think maybe we notice it more because we're closer to the intersection, but because the cars can make a wider turn now, they just really punch it. I mean, they're going faster on Avenida de los Arboles, and they can make that turn and make it real wide, and they just floor it. And I can hear it before I can see them. When the windows are open, you can hear the roar, and it just makes you look, whether we have kids in the front or not. It's stressful just listening to it and knowing someone's speeding by your home. And the fire and safety issues, I think Thousand Oaks has great services. I don't really know. That's just my impression. And so I would hope that any response time increase, I think we can handle it. I would hate for anybody to have any consequences from that, but I think we have great services in that if any place could do it, Thousand Oaks has a little bit of a cushion, and it's should be our decision to take that risk, and it seems like everybody is in favor of it, so of the speed bumps, I mean. So I just wanted to say that from the report, again, I wouldn't be here if we were just talking about somewhere in the 30 mile per hour range. It seems like the cars are going a lot faster, and like I said, it seems like they're going a lot faster sooner now. I mean, I don't know. I guess this has been going on for a long time, since the 80s, further up the street. So I'm really noticing it now more further down the street. So it seems like maybe it's affecting more people, or it's getting worse. I don't really know. But we do need your help, because it's not in my nature to go yelling at people speeding by my house. To me, it's scary. I don't like to confront people. You know, I mad as it makes me, and I don't plan on, letting my dog out. We have our yard so secure. I'm so afraid that the dog will get out. We have a little baby, but I would have been here 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago. It's just, aside from, of course, that kids can get hurt, hopefully, like you mentioned, no kids would be playing in the street. But just imagine people speeding by your house constantly, just screeching around the corner and flooring it and punching it. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. Makes you mad. And we all want to go home and live in Thousand Oaks and relax and be part of a community. And sidewalks would be great too. So thank you again for your time and your consideration. From the report, it seems like it could be a real possibility. I think that the cons were something like a proliferation of speed bumps, which I think there are worse things for a city to be known for. So I hope that give it consideration to give our streets speed bumps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Our next speaker is Curtis Branningham. Did I pronounce that right? Brantingham? Remember your name and city of residence for the record.
My name's Curtis Curtis Branningham, and my city of residence is Thousand Oaks. I live on 2679 Calle Olivo, and I'm very lucky to live there. It's actually the home is sorry to get off subject, but my in-laws own it, and so we're paying rent. But anyways, I have 3 kids, and I have twin boys, and I have a daughter who's older, and I feel unsafe to let them outside in the front because the cars just zoom by going 40 miles an hour, 45. They're really pushing it, and and I believe that Thousand Oaks is the 4th safest city in California, if I'm not mistaken. And I know the police are doing their jobs, and they probably have other things to do other than, sit at our street and police it. And though I'm not an expert on it, but anyways, I would I'm in favor of having the speed humps and or bumps, whatever you call them, and I think we should be proactive and be able to get them in before there's an accident or something, and somebody sues someone else, or I don't like suing, but I don't know what someone will do, and I'll start backing up, and people will not even wait for me to get on the road. They'll just zoom right by me when I'm backing out of my driveway. So there's no courtesy there. And sorry to go off subject, but on Arbalez, the main artery, if you will, it's gotten so busy, and it's to make a left, it seems like an eternity to make, and I have to sometimes merge into the to the center lane, merge there, wait, and people will go ahead of me turning left and not even wait. It's just a mess, and that I don't know, but that's not the point. Sorry to take all the time, or a lot of time, but I'd like to get them. I'd like lights too at night, because I'm driving and some people are just sitting out in the center of the street, and it's pitch black. You got to have your high beams on. So, so that's, I'll just, well, thank you so much for your time, and I love this city, and I'm grateful to live here, and it's very safe, like I said, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brantingham. All right, our speaker, Mr. Camp, has an opportunity to come up and give some final comments if you wish to take a couple of minutes.
Again, just to reiterate, I do want to say thank you, and that the tone is awesome, and we appreciate you listening to all of our concerns. And again, as you've heard from some of us who've been on the street for 10 plus years and those who have been on the street for 20 plus years, this isn't a new problem. It's an ongoing problem. Short-term solutions like increasing police patrol and enforcement there, although job security right? I do appreciate those recommendations, I do, but it's not a long-lasting, long-term solution. Our street is not busy enough to have somebody posted out there. And I personally have friends that work for the Sheriff's Department, Thousand Oaks Police, within the motor unit as well. And I've talked to them personally and I've asked them, hey, can you just spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to show some presence there? And they will if time allows, or they're directed to be somewhere more popular, like on Arbalest or Moore Park or one of the other more popular streets with crosswalk violations and things like that, or that have 5,000 vehicles per day traffic. We can't ask for them to do that. I don't think it's right for us to ask them to sit on our street. We need self-enforcing solutions and long-lasting solutions. I love the city. I love where we live. I love our neighbors. I don't plan on ever moving. I want to grow old in our house. I want to have grandkids in our house. I don't want to be back here in 20 years asking for the same thing for speed humps again, because this is now a 50-year problem that we've been dealing with and we haven't gotten any support. And hopefully within that time, nobody was killed. So it's really just a matter of, we have an opportunity now. You have the report in your hands. Whether you feel that the statistics that were showed in the survey are realistic or not, hopefully from all of our testimony, we paint a better picture of as far as what it's like to really live on the street. It's not horrible. I love the street, but it's not safe. And quality of life is extremely diminished. And we want that quality of life where we live. We want to be able to safely, or at least with a little bit more peace of mind, be able to walk on our street with our families, our kids, our dogs. We want to be able to, just go around the neighborhood and not have to completely, walk on eggshells, worry about the next car that's coming around the blind turn, at 40, 50 plus miles per hour. And cars are only getting faster. So, as far as those other options, again, we can do more surveys. We can look at other solutions. We could look at possible sidewalks. If you look at the pictures, I don't think that's, although I would love sidewalks, I don't think that's a viable option either, just for budgetary purposes. But also, if you look at most of the front yards, they have retaining walls. It's kind of built on a hill anyway, so there's drops in driveways. And if Mr. Stith's driveway, as you pull in, it literally goes straight up. And if you were to cut his property in 3+ more feet, his driveway would probably have about a 45% incline just to get into his driveway. And that's only one house. Ours goes down. And if you were to take 3+ feet away to put a sidewalk there, I don't think we would even have room to park a car, but it would literally be facing down and probably with a bad emergency brake go right into our garage. All right. I don't think that's a solution. Although I like the option, I don't think that's a viable solution. Putting a radar trailer out, we've done that. It's been there. They still speed even a week after it's out. We get the I don't say skewed numbers, but we get the numbers that aren't as fast as what's realistic, but we still get speeders that are going 40, 50, 55 miles per hour less than a week after that radar trailer was out. So that's not a long-term solution either. The only long-term solution in all of our minds, because this has been an ongoing issue, is speed humps. And I hate to admit it, because I'm not a huge fan of speed humps, right? They don't affect me in my patrol car. I don't even notice when I go over them. Almendro, our next street, is a beautiful street, and they have speed humps, and they have sidewalks. I don't think it takes away from that aesthetic value at all in that neighborhood, and I just want the same feeling when we're walking around on our streets.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. You have a question?
Yeah. Now, I know no one here falls in this category, but I always have to ask, because most speeders in neighborhoods that we come across are the neighbors. Mm-hmm. So I don't get a sense of this, that the people living on the street are the ones that are speeding.
No.
I don't even get a sense that they're the people on the side streets. But, our original calculations show there isn't that much cut through traffic. So, right. I mean, what is your sense of the people that are speeding? And I did observe a few of these people driving the neighborhood a couple days ago.
Yeah, again, that cut-through percentage that was put out there, and Mr. Mashika could probably speak more about how many days that survey was done with, as far as he can speak to the technology, but it reads license plates and within a certain area. And so those numbers are extremely off. Again, if there's 1,200 plus cars going on our street every day, yeah, I'm sure a lot of them are coming and going. Those aren't the ones doing 40, 50 miles per hour. But yeah, it's the cut through, the pass through traffic. Those that live here, again, we have 100% support for speed humps on our street. The few that aren't supportive are the ones who don't live on our street and have to deal with it on a daily basis. And there are, I think, just from listening here and maybe the letters that you received or the phone calls, those are far and in between. You have your support from the neighborhood in favor of speed humps. 100%.
So your jest really is that the cut-through people are the ones really doing the excessive speeding, whereas the people that live in the neighborhood respect their neighbors.
Yeah, I believe that.
All right.
And again, if we can cut Hillman off, make it a cul-de-sac like the original plan, great, perfect solution, but I don't see that happening.
Anyone else have a comment or question? So I'm going to throw this out there. I feel the strong concern for children, for safety, for ability to use the street. So that has become very clear to me listening to the discussions. My question for you is, how do you feel, or have you looked at the reality of when we have the unintended consequences of installing the speed bumps, the signage that has to occur, the striping that has to occur, the noises that will accompany each of the 8 speed bumps on both sides of the street for each of the people living near those speed bumps, in addition to the fact that those speed humps may be in front of your house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most of us would prefer to have one in front of our house. Again, and I think all of us here have driven down Almendro, we've driven down Montgomery, maybe not in a $50,000 Toyota truck and it feels rough, but while driving down those streets, they're beautiful streets. Montgomery is probably, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful streets in the city. I love running and driving down that street. The fact that there's speed humps and signs that note those, I don't think it takes away from the aesthetics at all. And so I'm supportive. You can put it in front of our street, and I think most would feel that as well in front of our house. So please, I welcome. Put 16 humps if you want. That's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I did want to indicate to you that there was one, we had one speaker card, or one comment card that was actually a speaker later. So we had one comment card, and that was in opposition to staff recommendation, but that was for the need, expressing the need for speed humps. All right. So we're going to close the community meeting. Do we have further discussion? Or let's see, are there questions for staff? Staff, does any member of staff want to comment on any questions that were brought up or concerns mentioned by the community?
Yes, I'll try to comment on some of the topics that came up. One of the things that came up was our data collection process. I guess it was felt that maybe the hoses that were placed along the road may have skewed the data, caused the numbers to be a little bit lower. If people saw the hoses, maybe it makes them drive a little bit slower or maybe even avoid the street. But we feel that's not the situation. We use these skinny pneumatic rubberized hoses. We use them often. You often driving in Thousand Oaks, you'll come across them. And we'll see a pattern if there's something unusual going on, if people are slowing down. But these hoses are placed out there up to a week at a time. And so maybe the first couple times a person drives over it, they'll notice it. But after a while, just like anything else, they tend to tune them out. And if they were, that effective in terms of slowing people down, we probably would be using those as a traffic calming device. There's a question brought up about, the speeds. What we said in the report was about 31 to 36 miles an hour was sort of the what we call the prevailing speed. That's the in engineering terms referred to as the 85th percentile speed. At depending on which location the count took place, 85% of the traffic or less was driving at that speed. Like say, for example, at 36 miles an hour, 85% of the traffic up by Hillman was driving at 36 miles an hour or less. It doesn't mean everyone was driving at 36. Typically, when you look at speeds, when we graph it out, it has a bell-shaped curve. Speeds at the high end, speeds at the low end. And when we look at that location by Hillman, if you look at the bell-shaped curve, about 5% of the traffic is in excess of 40 miles an hour. So, yes, there were speeds that were measured between 51 to 55 miles an hour, but those were the most extreme speeds that we found. Most of the speeds are going to be bunched in the middle, generally between 25 to 35 miles an hour. Shortcutting traffic, some people have, I guess, a different idea of what is shortcutting traffic. Shortcutting traffic to traffic engineers is traffic that uses an arterial or starts on an arterial street, goes into a residential section, and reemerges on another arterial street. So in this case, if you start at Arbalest, cut through the neighborhood using Olivo, and then reemerge back on Pedersen, that's a shortcut trip. But the gentleman, for example, that uses Calle Olivo from Uppingham, that's not considered a shortcut trip. There are quite a number of homes that live up in that area that use Olivo, but in engineering terms, that's not considered a shortcut trip. Okay, the question about over where Calle Pimiento, there's a 50 mile per hour sign by the dip that's often covered by landscaping. That's just an advisory speed to get people to drive slower. It's a more comfortable speed as you drive over that cross gutter so that cars don't bottom out. But it's not an enforceable speed. It's just a recommended speed. The enforceable speed on that road is 25 miles an hour. Question about or comment about if speed humps do go in, they like it engineered properly. We do have had these speed humps in on our streets since 1983. We did a number of studies before they actually went in as to how they should be at 3 inches high, 4 inches high, and we found that testing with the fire department, police department, ambulance services, 3 inches high is the ideal height. And the spacing of the speed humps are about 300 to 400 feet apart. And when you space them about 300 to 400 feet apart, you maintain a uniform speed along the entire distance of that road. If you space them too far apart, you'll get sort of speeding in between speed humps. If they're too close, they become more of a nuisance. And I think the other comment was relating to sidewalks. That's something that's not considered here. There is another process that they can follow if they want sidewalks. I would imagine it would be a community decision, and if they contact me after the meeting, I can refer them to someone within Public Works that can help them out with that. And I think that's pretty much it for the questions or comments.
Okay. Now we're going to close the community meeting. Do we need further discussion among the commissioners, or is there a motion? Mr. Roy?
You guys are great orators. You got your points across very nicely. Now, this is my 5th meeting being on the commission, so I'm the rookie here. And I'm still learning and trying to pay attention to the rules and guidelines. Back in 2009, Mayor Glancy signed a resolution to guide this commission about installing speed humps. And that's what we saw displayed here tonight. If you look at the data, there's no way that speed humps should go in. But listening to you as neighbors, it sounds horrible. And I'm thinking that when we send a recommendation, because we don't decide ourselves if speed humps can go in, we can only recommend to the city council that the speed humps go in. And then the council looks back to us and says, well, these are the guidelines we gave you. What are the exceptions here? Why are you going beyond what we told you to? And to be honest with you, once people that I know found that I was on the commission, they said, Mike, people speed on my street all the time. And we hear this a lot. And a lot of residential streets have speeders on them. So I, myself, am not really prepared to make a decision because there's such a disconnect between the data and what we're learning tonight from the actual residents on the street. So, Mr. Mashiko, is there a way that we can do a study that will show us or substantiate what the neighbors are saying, to where something would come to mind like a fast motion video where you can see how often the cars come by, what speeds, what time of the day, sort of as a substitute for me being there watching, or maybe a machine that will describe each car that passes by as to its speed, the time of day, and actually make it easier for me to make a decision, because there doesn't seem to be there seems to be pros and cons, and there seem to be about equal to me right now.
Well, I guess the way we measure the data is with those pneumatic hoses I mentioned earlier. They're out there on the road at the preset locations that we place them. They'll be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's where we get the speed profile. You know, we'll know what every vehicle that passed over each hose, what they're traveling, and that's where we came up with that 85th percentile speed. So it's just to give us a snapshot of sort of, you know, that bell-shaped curve I was telling you about. Are the speeds more towards the high end of that bell-shaped curve? Are they sort of typical? You get speeds on the low end, and then the majority in the middle, and then a few on the high end. And that's sort of what's going on here. It is the speed profile here is very common to most other residential streets. I don't think it was skewed towards the high side.
So, in a sense, there isn't any other technology we could use to gather even more data to substantiate what these residents are saying, as opposed to what the data is saying?
I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Commissioner McMahon.
Hi. I'm the one who's been here the longest. I don't even know how long, like 15 years. It's a long time. I've heard a lot of these. And so I feel like I can say a few words to what you've been saying. And the City Council has given us a window. They give us an opportunity to kind of make the exceptions. They said, if the street is curved and has blind curved, if there's a school, all these things are reasonable exceptions that the City Council will accept. And in all the years that I've been on the council, or the commission, I don't remember having such a almost unanimous community as far as speed humps go. There's usually a faction who wants it and a faction who doesn't. And I was there. I sat at a corner on the east side and a corner on the other side, and I didn't see a lot of cars. I didn't see a lot of speeding cars, but I wasn't there that long. But what really struck me was the hill and the curve. And it just seems like everywhere along the curve, you can't see further down the street. And so I can understand. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe there's that many speeders or that many cars that you guys are talking about, but I do recognize that it's dangerous because of that curve in the hill. And I can see that. And in my mind, that's enough of an exception to warrant recommending to the city council to put the speed humps in. That plus the almost unanimous community support for it. Because there's got to be something there if pretty much everybody wants it. That's all.
Thank you.
May I ask you a question? What about setting a precedent? Every neighborhood that comes in that has 100% participation.
Well, he asked me, so I don't care about setting a precedent because I'm perfectly prepared to say no, and I've said no lots and lots of times. I don't care.
Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, it's not a matter of us wanting to say yes or wanting to say no. We have guidelines on what it is that we can say yes to, and they're called warrants. Okay, and there's only one out of the three criteria that are anywhere closely met. However, there are some other mitigating factors that we look at, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, so we've heard absolutely everything that you've said. It's kind of like everybody wants a stop sign someplace as a traffic calming measure. Well, if we put one where it's not warranted, the city, number one, sets itself up to a lawsuit. Number two, it won't be enforceable in a court because they go and say, well, why was that there to begin with? Okay, so there are a lot of different things that we look at to make decisions. You have a problem. We love that you all came and you made us more aware of your problem. Our problem now is how do we resolve your issue? Okay, because if we don't find the reasons that are legitimate for it, it won't get past city council. Okay, we only make recommendations. Okay, so we guard how we send it to them with the proper information. We're kind of the filter, right? We look for the things that we can do and the exceptions. And there are other neighborhoods that have schools on the street that have gotten humps. There's one street that met all the criteria, and we thought this will be the easiest one to ever say yes to. And sure enough, everybody showed up and said, we don't want them. Shocked us to death. Okay, so we never know. And your comments are what kind of leads us in that direction. But we have to look at the data. Now, to support what my other commissioner just said, line of sight, I drove this neighborhood, and I drove back and forth. I followed some people, tried to figure out, are they soccer moms or people that lived in the neighborhood? I saw some speeders. Yes, they did live in the neighborhood. It was kind of like, well, if you had a sports car, you drove fast. If you had a minivan, you drove a little more, conservative. You have an issue, you live on a street with no lights, so I can't even imagine what this is like at night. No sidewalks, lots of parked cars, and people have to bike, back out of driveways. So, I see your issues. I'd be paranoid every time I backed out. So when you're backing out past a parked car, you look, but if somebody's speeding up a hill. But then you've got a lot of side streets here, too. And, I did stop and even talk to one of your neighbors. It was very insightful what she said for half an hour. And and believe me, she said just what you've said. And she even says, well, I take a shortcut to go up this way to take Pedersen myself to go. But then, that's how she just uses her own street. So I guess, the gist of what I'm trying to say here is I think we need to, I personally would ask to see if there's a study, on line of sight issues that exist on this street, if staff can provide something of that nature. That would give us a little more ammunition, because that's where I perceive the issues, or the parked cars having to back out. There are enough curves on this street, and I can see, I see how, believe it or not, we have notes and I marked all these things up. But having driven the street, I can tell you I didn't feel safe driving over 35 miles an hour. So the people that drive fast must drive it a lot, because, I think a police officer will tell you, what's driving too fast is when it's just unsafe. I mean, there are some things that can have lower posted, signage, but it's a safer condition because it's a wider street. There aren't as many curves and things of that nature. So what I would like is to try to get some additional information, if possible, on line of sight issues that exist on this street, because I thought there were many, and how that affects things. And here's the thing that I don't think was considered. I didn't feel comfortable on this street line of sight-wise during the daylight. I can only imagine driving at night what it's like. So I don't know, and I don't think we've ever requested it, if there is some way for us to check on this, because, I mean, that just, with no lights and, points of reference, people's, maybe backup lights hidden by parked cars and stuff like that. I mean, that was the scariest thing on this street to me. So I know the number of trips. I know the speed is still kind of, we have to go by guidelines. There's always going to be a few. We cannot modify everybody's behavior. If we, you just can't. We have certain tools, and we try to, do signage and striping and things that will, try to modify people's driving behavior. But some people are just bad drivers, and they're going to remain that way, and we can't affect that. We look for things we can affect and safely do it without setting dangerous precedences, or in this case, possibly making a recommendation that won't go any farther. So, I would request that we look at that on the street for that safety reason, and see if, that is an exception that, might make the difference here when we do finally send our recommendation. And in the short term, and I know you don't want to hear this, I would probably recommend what staff said. Just all we can do is, in a short term, affect it is more police enforcement, the radar sign. Those are short term, modifications. But again, your warrants are just not there unless we have some additional data. I caution not wanting to move forward and getting you just turned down without knowing what these exceptions are, or doing a little more investigating to find them out, which could be in your favor. Okay? So that's about it. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to, first of all, I wanted to respond to precedent. I do believe that there has been a precedent for not following the guidelines, and there are 8 streets that did not meet the warrants but were recommended by the city to the city council for action and did receive speed humps. So that's something that we can do. I think that's important that we are all very aware of, for instance, the line of sight issues that are of a concern. I want to ask if the staff can actually provide us with more information if we postpone this decision before we move on to the city council, if there's something more that can be done before we make a final vote.
Okay. Yeah, we could do additional research for this and have another meeting regarding the same topic. Basically, you would make a motion to continue this to a future date, and we would do additional research in terms of line of sight. We'd identify locations that we looked due to vertical curvature, horizontal curvature, visibility with parked cars, without parked cars, things like that. And we could probably also summarize the list of streets here on page 7 that identify the locations that were ultimately approved for speed humps that didn't fully meet the criteria. We can give you more information in those cases as to what was used to cite why the speed humps were recommended to go in.
Okay. Because I think that more information will strengthen the petition. My personal view is that I really believe that the community that comes forward and speaks should be heard. And I am very proud of public comments. And that's how I'm sitting on this commission myself, is because I was engaged in something that I felt very strongly about, and I came and spoke to the city council, and they heard me. So I just, as a commissioner, want to thank you. I was also advised that the decision may not go the way that I wanted. And so I just need to prepare everyone for the process. But we're honored. As a commissioner, I'm honored to be able to see this turnout, because we usually don't. We usually have one person, and he's in the yellow jacket at our and he didn't even speak tonight. But, we really don't. You do. But I really value your participation and your commitment to your street. And we usually have a split presentation where you've got as many people opposed as you have for. And that's not what we heard tonight. With that said, and I'll ask for a motion in a minute, I do want to say that there are unintended consequences to all of our actions. This commission actually voted for the traffic calming measure on Avenida de los Arboles. And some of the traffic experiences that you may be having could have been as a result of our effort to slow down traffic and to provide a safe zone for every user of Arboles. So my goal for saying that is just be prepared, because it could provide you with the safety of a little more time to keep your kids from being hit by a car. They have a little more time to slow down and see your animals in the street. However, the downside might be because the speed humps are loud, and they are things that you live with for the rest of the time that you live on that street. So we want to honor your concerns, but also reflect on the real cost of putting in speed humps isn't the $25,000. It's what you live with every day. Having said that, I'd like to call for a motion.
Before I make the motion, I just want to say also, I love that y'all were here. I love that all the kids were here. I'm scared to death that the kids are going to think if eventually speed humps go in that they're safe. Please talk to them and tell them that that's not it. It's going to help if it happens, but talk to them about that. And all you kids who spoke, you were wonderful. Do it again with us or with the city council. It was awesome. And in that, I will make a motion that we ask staff to do a little research on the site, the line of sight in the daylight, in the nighttime, and come back to us next month, unless we postpone our meeting, and come back to us at the next meeting, and then we can look at it again as an action item.
And do we take a vote on this?
Yes.
When your name is called, please answer yes or no. Commissioner Gregory?
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon?
Yes.
Commissioner Reeder?
Yes.
Vice Chair Engler?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much for joining. You may stay if you'd like.
We have more business.
It's a school night.
It is. It is.
School night. Oh my God.
Okay.
We're not done.
One second. All right, where am I?
I left my packet in the car.
All right, we have more business, so staff, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Lowry.
Good evening, Chair Engler and members of the Traffic Commission. It is with great pleasure tonight that I bring you a status report on the pedestrian crosswalk improvement projects. The project, which you've heard in the past from, basically from the idea to design, went to construction, is now complete. So this is just a quick status update. The project is the enhancement of 6 existing crosswalks throughout the city. Of the 6 crosswalks, all 6 crosswalks have new in-pavement lights, and also at the crosswalk, pedestrian warning signs that have 2 little flashing beacons in them. 5 of the 6 crosswalks have advanced warning lights with a beacon, and 2 out of the 6 have curb extensions, which shorten the distance of crossing. So I'm going to go through and show you pictures of what the project looks like that now it's complete. Did go to construction in May, was finalized in September, and all the crosswalks are now activated. This is the intersection of Kimber and Baxter. Directly adjacent to this intersection is Maple Elementary School. This is one of the intersections that has the in-ground, as I said, the lights and the flashing pedestrian warning signs adjacent to it. This is the intersection of Arbalest and Velarde. Directly adjacent to this school is Wildwood Elementary School. It's a very wide street with the raised median in the middle, so there's 3 pedestrian warning signs with the flashing lights on the signs. This is Gainsborough Windsor. It's down the street from Glenwood Elementary School. This is one of the 2 intersections on Gainsborough that have, in addition to the in-pavement lighting and pedestrian signs, that has the bulb outs, and I have a better picture of the bulb outs in another slide. This is Gainsborough and Dover, where you see there's a center turn lane here, and it provides a more enhanced crosswalk because the street's very wide. It also has the bike lanes on it. I should have said, and that's down the street from Redwood Middle School and Acacia Elementary School. This is Jans and Marlowe, which is kind of sandwiched in between Los Robles Hospital and Lorena High School. It's down the street from Aspen Elementary School, but it's also the majority of the kids that cross here, usually on their bicycle, while they walk their bicycles, come from Redwood. And then the 6th intersection is at Oberlin and Queensbury, directly adjacent to Aspen Elementary School. This is the exception where the only crosswalk doesn't have the advanced warning beacons due to the residential neighborhood, residential street of this neighborhood. This is what you'll encounter when you want to turn on the flashing beacons. The crossing guard usually uses it during the school crossing time, but it's activated 24/7. So anytime the button's pushed, the in-ground pavement lights blink, the pedestrian warning signs at the crosswalk blink, and the advanced beacons blink. This is what the advanced beacon sign and beacon looks like. It's solar powered, so up at the very top where you see the beacon to the left, that thing that's sticking out, that's the solar power for it. And then on either side of the 2 people walking, those little orange dots, those are the what blinks. And I was thinking if anyone wants to get up early tomorrow morning, it would be an excellent day to see them activated, because it's going to be really lousy weather probably, and it'll really be a good example of how great these things enhance the crossing. This is I have both bulb outs. This is as you go down Windsor, so you're coming from Glenwood Elementary School at Gainsborough. And then this is the one at Gainsborough and Dover. You're headed towards, I guess it's Tarantula Hill, but it's right there at Dover, headed towards Redwood. Then now that the project's complete and activated, and we have all this positive feedback from all the schools, the crossing guards, the students that are using it, we're going to embark on the education program that was part of the grant at the 5 elementary schools as well as Redwood Middle School. And with that, I will answer any and all questions.
Have there been any unintended consequences?
I have not been made aware of any at all, no.
The advanced warning beacons,
Mm-hmm.
do they flash all night long?
No, everything only flashes when the button's activated.
Oh, I
so
see.
when they push it, for example, and if depending on how wide the street is, the flashing stays on based on the width of the street. That's usually based on how long it takes a pedestrian to cross the street. But,
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Does he have a mic?
You need a mic.
I'm sorry, but you need a mic.
Sorry. There was an accident of some sort at Dover and Gainsborough. I think it was somebody stopped and possibly somebody bumped into somebody. I don't believe, seen the details of that accident. I don't even know that there was a police report, but it was a change in traffic pattern, and sometimes we see.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mrs. Lowry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for all this. I mean, I love these tools, shorten the distance pedestrians have to travel. I mean, this is why we're here, and you guys are doing a great job. So
Well, that's
thank
great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Let me comment from the audience. I've ridden by many of these, and I think they.
You need a mic.
Sorry, excuse me, sir. You need a microphone.
I think everybody heard my point.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to move to item C?
Okay, item I think it was 6C. There's no verbal presentation, just information. It's a monthly bicycle advisory team minutes. Don't believe there was a meeting this past month, but there will be one upcoming on January 8th. And just some information about the Amgen Tour of California coming to Thousand Oaks in 2014. I think there's a typo in the packet that says 2013, but I think that should be 2014.
Thank you. All right. Item 7 is a status report of prior Traffic Commission recommendations. Does staff want to comment?
We just want to add that at the last meeting, we had a presentation on the Hillcrest Drive restriping project. I think there was a community meeting that occurred just prior to that, and so I believe the direction was expand the notification zone to incorporate a larger area of that same zone. That meeting was held on November 7th. I believe it was a small turnout, but very positive results from that, very similar to that very first meeting. So I believe the plan is now to expand the community outreach to reach out to other segments of the roadway. And that should be or will be covered at future Traffic Commission meetings.
Thank you. All right. Our next, we have no commission referrals from October 16th. So we move to item 9, our work program and commission schedule. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Mashiko.
A couple items to comment about the future agenda items. In addition to what's listed in the on page 32, we're going to have the Kaya Levo item come back again, and we'll also have a briefing by a police officer at a future meeting. Last night at the City Council meeting, prior to the beginning of their normal meeting, there was a police officer or police department personnel came and talked about or gave him a security briefing. So we want to repeat something like that with the Traffic Commission here. There's a video presentation and just a verbal presentation on top of that, and that would occur maybe half hour before the normal meeting begins, and that would just be with just Traffic Commission members only.
Okay. Does that bring us to our work program, our schedule, item 9? Is that it? So, okay, item 10, Traffic Commission comments discussion. Is there anything that anyone wanted to discuss tonight? No? Okay, and then I want to talk about our December 18th meeting. It's our normally scheduled meeting for December, and this is an action item. Our vote is to consider canceling the December meeting and scheduling our next meeting in January 2014. Any comments?
Is everyone else going dark in December as is fairly standard? I mean, we don't have anything on the agenda here.
No, I don't think so. I believe council does have at least one meeting in December, possibly two, but I know of, they do have 2 meetings in December.
Oh, okay. I mean, do we have anything that's on our docket that cannot wait until January, or?
Yeah, I don't believe there's really anything on that on page 32 that right. needs to be heard right away.
So then the research that you would be doing would that require more than a month for you to assemble data for us to revisit the Calle Olivo discussion?
It probably wouldn't. I think the field work that we would do, probably we can conduct it over a period of 2 to 3 days. And then the other component is summarizing all the other streets that have had speed humps installed and summarize what their special considerations were.
So considering your workload and how much it will take to do this, do you feel that January is we can schedule for January? Or I mean, I don't want to rush it. I want to make sure the data we get is what will tell us one way or the other, so we don't put off the families again. But is a January meeting recommended for getting what you need put together?
Yeah, that's definitely a reasonable time frame to allow us to get all the information to you. That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to cancel the December meeting and reconvene in January 15th, 2014.
I'll make the motion to cancel the December 18th, 2013 meeting and hold our next meeting on January 15th, 2014.
Madam Vice Chair, may we take a hand vote on this?
Yes.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you very much. The Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission is now adjourned until 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, January 15th, 2014. Have a good end of the year.